Chapter 541. There's no need to dig into the so-called secrets of the posture itself. Everything about its form was already exposed when it was displayed. Even if it had the value of guidance, any guidance posture would only be meaningful in the complete system. If there's really something to this posture, then it could be a single moment of the entire movement. Moreover, there should be countless details hidden in places that we can't see, such as the corresponding breathing technique, the circulation of qi and blood in deeper organs, and even the coordination of spiritual methods. Xue Lei tried his best to convey and translate Gym Master Xiao's preliminary opinion. His mouth and tongue seemed to be cramping up, and it was extremely difficult for him to do so. However, there was no other choice. Gym Master Xiao didn't like using electronic devices. Or rather, he couldn't use them. It was said that any electronic device on Gym Master Xiao's body would be destroyed in a few minutes. It was as if there was a powerful electromagnetic radiation source in his body that could destroy the intricate circuit structure at any moment. As for those explanations, they were naturally based on the funny poses in the photos. Luo Nan's group of people became restless from the great discovery they made at noon. They believed that they had cracked an absolutely enormous secret. But aside from Rui when succeeding a few more times, Luo Nan, Xue Lei, Cat Eyes, Qi Nikuan, God. Not a single person was able to replicate Rui Wen's results. As for Rui Wen herself, she was confused as to how such a miraculous scene had occurred and couldn't explain it. Luo Nan spent the entire afternoon in a trance. And as time passed, he became more and more irritable. He had obviously touched upon the core secret, but there was still a thin veil that he could not uncover. This feeling was too hateful. In the end, it was Xue Lei who suggested asking Gym Master Xiao about this. After all, this seemed to be the domain of body techniques. In this aspect, Gym Master Xiao could be said to be extremely authoritative. Luo Nan quickly agreed. He made a firm resolution in his heart. If Gym Master Xiao still couldn't decipher this, then he would consult Her Majesty Empress Wu and President Ouyang one by one. With the living example of Rui Wen, these apex figures should at least give him an explanation. After the afternoon classes ended and the club activities started, Xue Lei hurried back. Actually, Luo Nan wanted to go as well, but his aunt contacted him midway. She took half a day off this afternoon. She wanted to go to the Welfare Institute before dinner tonight. She wanted Luo Nan to accompany her. At the end of the day, his aunt would still be worried if she didn't do a proper investigation. Luo Nan was helpless. He could only finish the scenes in front of him. He was busy all the way until dinner time. Hall Master Xiao also found it difficult to make a decision. Luo Nan came out from the dinner table to pick up the phone. It was already 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening. Luo Nan's current state was very ordinary. His mental state was exerting a lot of energy. Even though he had been injected with stimulants, he still couldn't make ends meet. He tried his best to understand Gym Master Xiao's explanation. He tried so hard that his temples were throbbing, but he still couldn't find any useful clues. He couldn't help but feel resentful. But Rui Wen's situation. As soon as the words left his mouth, Luo Nan thought of the most solid reason. Rui Wen was a special case. This was because her form and soul were blended. Her inside and outside were one. Her form and soul structure didn't even need to be fixed. She just needed to find the right frequency and self-adjustment, and her internal structure could be naturally formed. In fact, Rui Wen hadn't been able to succeed every time she had tried this afternoon. And the few times she had succeeded, there had been some differences in her state of mind. Luo Nan's mind was in chaos. He was at a loss. Especially when it came to details, devilish details. How did he know what the details were? There was no clue at all. If he had to figure it out. No, if he had to bypass all of this, was he supposed to first take Rui Wen as his teacher and learn the art of form and soul fusion? But someone like Rui Wen was 99% talented. Luo Nan pondered left and right, and his scalp stung. It was extremely unbearable. In this situation, it was most likely that the effects of the stimulant drug were already insufficient. Luo Nan calculated that there was around 50 hours until the drug was injected. It seemed that he would need to replenish it tomorrow. Xue Lei was still trying his best to translate Gym Master Xiao's opinion. Right now, we can't dig out anything purely from the level of body arts. If you really want to continue, there's no harm in considering two aspects. Luo Nan's mind stirred. and his head hurt even more. He sucked in a cold breath and asked, "Hiss. Which two?" "The first one is still to use body arts as a base, but do the opposite. Connect with the outside world and walk the path of combining the inside and outside. This is one of the ideal theories for imparting martial arts. The most basic method is to combine the principles of Daoyin and yoga. Start with the current breathing technique and make constant adjustments. Find a relatively reasonable point of convergence with the external environment. In this way, you need an environment overflowing with life. Right now, it's the middle of winter. Only the North Shore jungle is a bit better. But, cough. Gym Master says that this is like shooting a bird at random. It's like giving medicine to a dead horse." Luo Nan rubbed his temples and slowly nodded. This was indeed a path. The rarest thing was that Gym Master Xiao had even thought of a specific method. It was quite feasible. As for the final evaluation, Luo Nan automatically ignored it. Xue Lei was silent for a moment. He seemed to have heard Gym Master Xiao's words. Xue Lei then repeated, "The second path. Gym Master says that perhaps your train of thought can be a bit more abstract." Luo Nan really didn't understand this time. Xue Lei was the same, so it was extremely awkward for Xue Lei to repeat. Gym Master means that if all attempts fail, there's no harm in introducing the elements of philosophical thinking. Introduce the posture into the theoretical system you're used to. Make it more abstract and concise. Even symbolization is fine. It's not limited to the realm of body arts. He says that you can understand. Luo Nan did understand a bit. Gym Master Xiao wanted him to connect this posture with a system of formatting theory and expand his train of thought. Actually, Luo Nan had already done this when he discovered the uniqueness of this posture, but he still didn't have a clue. Xue Lei then said, "Gym Master Xiao said this much. Oh, as for Rui Wen's situation, it's best if you bring her over later. Let Gym Master Xiao take a look." Gym Master Xiao basically said this much. Luo Nan didn't get the information he wanted to hear the most, but it couldn't be said that he gained nothing. However, this consumed even more of his mental strength. The blood vessels near his temples pulsed even more vigorously after he hung up the phone. Luo Nan leaned against the wall of the corridor. He closed his eyes and regulated his breathing, allowing the information, thoughts, and stimuli to flow back and forth in his mind. He finally understood that the rhetoric of mentally and physically exhausted and lighting a lamp to boil oil was absolutely not an exaggeration from the people of the world. This was especially true when he had to consider more and more fields. The scope of his mental strength was like a smashed water tank. Its water level dropped rapidly at a visible speed. This was thanks to the altar frame feeding back vital energy. It was quite a supplement. Luo Nan thought about the things he had to pay attention to. The Soul Cloak had already traveled nearly 3,000 kilometers out of Xia City's outer sea. The spider web altar covered the entire city. The security monitoring of each and every one of his closest family members. The intelligence gathering of various enemies. The changes in the cloud world. The changes in the external neuron. The training of the overall planning technique. Luo Nan hadn't slept for nearly 90 hours since the 8th. He stopped his daily cultivation and focused all of his mental strength on the 2000th event. But even so, he still didn't have enough time. He didn't have enough mental strength. He didn't have enough planning. He didn't have enough strength. Only thoughts, exhaustion, and impatience overflowed in his heart. They boiled endlessly. This bunch of scum, both inside and outside the city. They never stopped. Why don't I just kill a bunch of them? I'll have some peace and quiet. Fellow student, are you okay? Luo Nan's situation was quite eye-catching. A waiter from this restaurant walked over and asked about Luo Nan's situation. Letting me have some peace and quiet is the greatest care you can give me. Luo Nan suppressed this sort of annoying ridicule back into his stomach. He opened his eyes and returned a smile to this kind waiter. I'm fine. Oh, Worker Zhai. The door to the corridor opened, and Worker Zhai walked out. Luo Nan was shocked. Could it be that there was a problem inside? Worker Zhai looked at Luo Nan's expression and laughed. It's fine. The atmosphere is quite good. Actually, Luo Nan didn't need Worker Zhai to say anything. Luo Nan was able to confirm it with his mental senses. Luo Nan's senseless reaction could only mean that his mind was in a trance. His condition was terrible. Luo Nan wasn't willing to show negative emotions in front of worker Zhai. He took a deep breath and straightened his body. What made him rejoice was that the atmosphere of this family gathering really was quite good. The smart people were mentally prepared, and the confused people continued to be confused. As such, he could only pass this peacefully. But he never expected that his aunt's excessive worry would attract Di Wei-Wu, who unexpectedly became the key to livening up the atmosphere. From the little guy's point of view, the cold and aloof flat-chested sister was together with Luo Nan. Luo Nan was very powerful, so that person should be very powerful as well. The dean had hinted at this before. His cheap godfather and that magic-capable Uncle Papercut had touched on his life experiences and history when they talked. Luo Nan couldn't help but be in awe of this. Also, he just couldn't find a martial arts school. He might as well take a teacher nearby and learn how to fight. That would be good. Di Wei-Wu's childish words carried no harm. He snuck a sip of his alcoholic drink at the table. His mouth was even harder to control, but he suddenly broke the seal on the topic of the underground fighting arena. Everyone else was worried, but Ru Wen didn't mind at all. Speaking of which, Ru Wen was in an abnormal state tonight. Ever since she met with Madame Luo Shuqing in the afternoon, she actually opened her mouth. She didn't say much, but she did answer questions. Moreover, it was absolutely not a perfunctory response like yes or no. It was usually a matter of a few words that could be thoroughly explained, and it displayed extremely shocking logic, comprehension, and even the ability to express. For example, before Luo Nan left the table, Mo Peng really couldn't hold back his curiosity. He used the reason of losing weight to ask Ru Wen about her combat training. Ru Wen answered with nutrition, focus, and talent. Her answers of 6 words directly killed Mo Peng as she explained the key points. Even if she cherished her words like gold, she still spoke more in this half-day than she did in the past few days combined. Luo Nan couldn't help but think. Was this change in Ru Wen driven by the environment? Or was it that incident at noon? Don't blame him for being oversensitive. Ru Wen was always in deep thought after the incident. Even if she was still cold and distant to outsiders, it was absolutely different from her usual empty silence. Hell. He was thinking about that position again. Luo Nan's mind was in chaos right now. Thoughts from all directions came and went far too frequently. His mind wandered a lot as he chatted with Worker Zhai. Worker Zhai misunderstood. He laughed and said, "Don't worry. I see that your family's elders have a good impression of Ru Wen. They take good care of her feelings. As for that older sister of yours, she has a strong sense of justice. Mo Peng has a very kind heart." Luo Nan forced a laugh. Worker Zhai continued, "Besides, we won't immediately adopt her. There will always be a process of familiarity from being strangers. Take our family's Wei-Wu for example. He doesn't regard himself as an outsider at all. Well, I'm really afraid that he'll get hot-headed and say some unreliable things. Let's go back?" "Yeah, okay. But you need to wash your face first. Rub it hard." "Huh." Worker Zhai pointed at his own face. Today is a happy day. There should be a bit of color. So Worker Zhai saw it all. Luo Nan smiled wryly. He first asked Worker Zhai to go back. He ran to the bathroom and used hot water to wash his face. He did as Worker Zhai suggested. He rubbed his face hard until his skin was red and hot. Only then did he turn back. By the time he returned to the room, most of the people had finished eating and left. They were sitting on the sofa in the room, chatting over fruits and desserts. The ones who spoke were mainly his aunt and Mo Ya. It was just as Worker Zhai said. They took good care of Ru Wen's situation. They didn't force Ru Wen to talk. They didn't ask about her background or her background. Ru Wen was sitting with Mo Peng and Di Wei-Wu right now. The two boys had their arms around each other's shoulders. They were making a big fuss as they played mobile games. However, Di Wei-Wu was quite forthright. He rested half of his body on Ru Wen's lap so that his flat-chested sister could enjoy the wonderful game scene. Fine. This little Shota was simply the closest person in the world to Miss 2 in 1,000. Ru Wen returned to her quiet state. Perhaps she was used to being pestered by Di Wei-Wu, so her body language was very natural. Perhaps she thought that Di Wei-Wu, who was constantly chattering away, was a large crow? Luo Nan was a bit stupefied when faced with this situation. It was his aunt who called him over. She first asked him if he had eaten his fill. After getting an affirmative answer, she directly asked him about Rue Wen's future plans. Rue Wen is still young. All Luo Nan knew was that when his telepathic thoughts connected to the projected icon of the Soul Light Seed, he thought that a corner of the mysterious veil of the virtual brain app had finally been unveiled to him. But what he was faced with was yet another terrible text pop-up window. There was also an unreadable grayish-white color below. The words on the pop-up window were still indecipherable. Luo Nan was only left with two options of yes and no. One of the options was marked as the default choice. Other than the amount of text, this pop-up window was practically identical to the one Luo Nan encountered. Could it be that this app is here to mess with me? Right now, Luo Nan had already encountered 3 different pop-up windows in the virtual brain interface. The 3 groups of words were like 3 cold, high walls, blocking him from the core meaning, making it impossible for him to approach. Under the pop-up window, the unreadable grayish-white hue seemed to have gone in countless circles before returning to its original point. Does the app have a delete option? Luo Nan's heart was filled with resentment. He was disinclined to guess the true meaning of the pop-up window. He followed the default option and clicked on it. Then, a 4th pop-up window jumped out. WTF. Luo Nan smashed his seat heavily. He even cursed out loud in a moment of desperation. Humph! You dare to curse at me? Moya turned her head from the driver's seat. Her sharp and slender eyebrows shot up. Her expression was extremely dangerous. Luo Nan was sitting in Moya's sports car. Right now there were only him and Moya in the car. As the lead singer of a rock band, Moya's style of driving was like a violent storm. She took the lead right now, leaving the other 2 cars behind without a trace. Big sis, you're having fun. It'll be hard to be a security guard. Luo Nan sighed. He wasn't in the mood to play around with her. He just exhaled. Slow down a bit. Sorry. I was distracted just now. Then you got fixed up by someone? Moya teased, but she really did slow down the car. Luo Nan was unable to explain this. Luckily, Moya didn't get to the bottom of things. She just changed the topic. Rue Wen, I've fought for you to stay right under my eyes. As for the school, you deal with it yourself. Ha! But you're talking about... Moya lightly curled her lips. There are tens of thousands of outstanding alumni of Acumen School. How could they look up to a lowly singer like me? 2 days ago, I was able to ask a friend to help me out, but that friend recently ran off to the wilderness to do scientific research. If I were to ask someone else, my relationship wouldn't be that strong. I'd lose face if things went wrong. Luo Nan had practically never seen Moya display such a weak appearance. He couldn't react for a time. He finally replied with great difficulty. Then what are you doing? Don't you have a bunch of scoundrel friends at Acumen School? Also, you can even order around the deputy director of the SCA. Those school directors of Acumen School don't count for much. Am I right, Mr. Luo? Okay. Actually, I just received a call from a certain manager. There's a last-minute appointment tomorrow. A group operation. We have to leave in the morning. It's useless to ask for leave. If I go back on my word now, I won't have the face to see the Empress Dowager. Luo Nan heard the word appointment, and suddenly thought of a few eyes that had already been burnt into charcoal. Even though the person who came up with the idea had died, the various bosses had backup copies of their dirty tricks. It wasn't impossible for them to appear. But what could he say to Moya? He could only say a simple sentence. Pay attention to safety. Yeah. You need to have a plan for your journey. He subconsciously sighed when he spoke to this point. However, the irritable mood in his heart dispersed quite a bit from this turbid breath. The current situation in Xia City was created by him. Naturally, he had to solve it. At this stage, his plan was still in its embryonic form. There was still a lot of work that needed to be done. The situation was becoming more and more complicated, more and more exhausting. Everyone else could get angry, but he couldn't. Why did it have to be like this? Wasn't it because of the flaws in his personal strength? If he really had Her Majesty Empress Wu. No, even if he had the strength of Jin Tong, it would be enough to suppress the overall situation. He researched the virtual brain interface and the external neuron for the sake of an opportunity to increase his strength. Looking at it this way, no matter how disgusting the virtual brain interface's changes were, as long as it was constantly changing, this opportunity would always exist. Why did he need to torment himself? Luo Nan's state of mind calmed down quite a bit as these thoughts circled around in his head. You didn't speak again, and the car returned to silence. Luo Nan naturally shifted his mind back to the virtual brain interface. The pop-up text window was still there. Icy cold. There were two options, and one of them was selected by default. Luo Nan suppressed the mood in his mind. He followed convention and simply chose the default option. The interface switched once more. It was also in this instant that the hateful ash-gray color suddenly brightened. A new interface appeared above the icon of the soul light seed. The surface flickered with a dense white light. The faint light was like strands of fresh air seeping in from a closed cellar. It made his heart, which had been stifled for a long time, feel quite a bit more relaxed. This light is pretty weird. Another pop-up window popped up just as Luo Nan had this thought. 5 consecutive shots. Luo Nan's heart was filled with profanity, but it had already surged to the back of his throat. Chapter 543. That's right, he could flip the page. The first thing Luo Nan saw was the assembly diagram interface. In the game it was pretty much everything. But in the virtual brain app, it was just a portion of the assembly diagram. There were many more to come. Luo Nan flipped through it roughly, relying on his mechanical knowledge and game experience. He guessed that it included at least 4 or 5 basic modules, such as energy, life support, armor perception, and so on. If he were to count the accessories, mounts, and so on, then there were thousands of components involved. Moreover, each component could have a separate interface. Different structural angles could be adjusted, and it could also present a 3-dimensional view, a cross-sectional view, and other flat drawing effects. If his consciousness deliberately tapped, it could even display even more detailed explanatory text. Of course, Luo Nan couldn't understand it. No game would be so stingy with details to this extent. This proved that this wasn't a game. It was a blueprint. An extremely complete design blueprint? Based on Luo Nan's shallow knowledge, he could rely on the level of detail in the information of these blueprints. If he had a processing plant, or even a 3D printer, and enough raw materials, then perhaps he would be able to quickly produce, assemble, and use it. Simply amazing. Luo Nan couldn't help but let his imagination run wild. Why did the external neuron produce such a result when it analyzed Jin Tong's spiritual seed? Could it be that this exoskeleton was tailored for Jin Tong? But he needed to come back to life first. And wasn't this body a bit small? He didn't understand the size labels, but this kind of interface that was directly presented on the consciousness level possessed a bit of intuition. Luo Nan's consciousness was immersed within, and he was able to have an intuitive concept of size. It was as if he himself was immersed within, wearing a set of armor that was unpredictable. He could sense whether it was suitable or not. His feeling was, Jin Tong's physique isn't too suitable. It fits quite well on me, but it can't be for me. For me. Luo Nan's heart thumped loudly. He suddenly thought of Jack at this moment. As for why his thoughts had such a large leap, it was really due to the external neuron pulling him in. He still remembered that fellow Jack had used a dynamo core to transform from an altered human into a burner. Later on, even when he was in a half-crippled state, he could still control the deep blue walker exoskeleton without any hindrance. What did this mean? Did it mean that Jack was awesome? Wrong. This meant that the external neuron, which essentially belonged to the dynamo core, should be compatible with the deep blue walker system. In the primitive interface of the virtual brain, there was an option of exoskeleton. Elements such as the Wraith Rune and the Bloody Soul Temple, which had nothing to do with each other, were all classified under this category. Luo Nan's heartbeat inexplicably accelerated. The external neuron's design had been deduced to this step. Wasn't it clear that they wanted to create an exoskeleton for the external neuron, for Luo Nan himself? Perhaps it was a special version of the Deep Blue Walker? That sounds good. But the problem was that he had no idea how to get started. Did he really have to follow this set of virtual blueprints, find a 3D printer, and build an exoskeleton from scratch? I was just thinking of playing just now. Before he could finish his thought, the external neuron in his brain suddenly emitted electricity. This light burst forth suddenly, and it directly interfered with the nerves of Luo Nan's brain in a very rare manner. Luo Nan's eyelids twitched. He was worried that something bad would happen, so his mind temporarily jumped out of the equipment interface to carefully observe the direction of the electricity. Luckily, the operation method of the electricity was quite reliable. It was the coupling method he was most familiar with and most suitable for him. It took a certain power of the external neuron and applied it to a portion of the neuron region that processed visual information, as well as a deeper layer of mental senses. As for what it was used for, Luo Nan blinked his eyes. There weren't too many changes in his field of vision, but on the mental plane, there were inexplicably many white dots flickering within the scene of the soul cape that covered Xia City. He subconsciously chose a dot and focused his mind, but what he saw were several fully armed soldiers. Looking at the insignia, they should be military elites that were temporarily dispatched into Xia City due to the state of emergency. They all wore the military's standard eagle-shot light exoskeleton armor. Right now they were carrying out patrol missions in the vicinity of the city center. Right now Luo Nan was using his mental senses, but he still subconsciously blinked his eyes once more. His attention was completely absorbed by the white light that floated on the standard eagle-shot exoskeleton armor. The white light was concentrated on the waists of the eagle-shot exoskeletons. If one were to carefully discern it, they should be armor. No, they were individual life support modules hidden behind the armor. All the exoskeletons were like this without exception. Clearly, the external neuron was very interested in this module. Luo Nan memorized this module in his heart and shifted his senses. This time, he locked onto a military factory located in the outskirts of the city. There was an unending stream of production and assembly of various military components inside. He discovered another type of metal component here. He couldn't name it, but the white light piled up from similar products nearly dazzled Luo Nan's eyes. Without a doubt, this was the result of the electricity of the external neuron. It seemed to coat Luo Nan's sensory system with a layer of film, forming some sort of filter effect. Luo Nan used this to mark a few objects. Even if he used his toes to think, he would be able to guess that these objects were related to the assembly interface that Luo Nan had just discovered. This was indeed the case. When Luo Nan's consciousness returned to the assembly interface, two component interfaces popped up on their own. Their external appearances were basically similar to the modules and components that he had just discovered. Did he really have to go kill monsters and grind for components? If he gathered over 10,000 components, wouldn't he be able to summon the exoskeleton godly equipment? Luo Nan felt that he had inexplicably entered an absurd reality game. It was hard for him not to think. Why did the interface elements of the external neuron have such a high degree of similarity to the game 10 Days in the Wilderness? Whether it was 10 Days in the Wilderness or Frost River reality, they both had the shadows of the Star Alliance Committee, the military and Quantum Corporation. What did this mean? That person. Was his father related to all of this? Luo Nan pulled out his notebook and solemnly noted it down. He would go back and collect detailed information on the 10 Days in the Wilderness game. Perhaps this would be an extremely important clue. Of course, the most important and most direct clue was still within his brain. In any case, the assembly interface of the virtual brain app had formed a connection with concrete objects in the real world through the use of the external neuron. It formed a correspondence, and it created a demand. Luo Nan's thoughts drew closer to the problem of reality. It must be said that the corresponding target of the assembly interface gave him a problem that was neither too big nor too small. It must be known that Luo Nan's mental senses, including the interference scene of his soul cloak, were the most sensitive to living beings. He could naturally control them into the living starry sky, saving him a lot of effort. But these components were all inanimate objects. It was not impossible to pay attention to them, but he needed to spare some extra effort. It was a bit strenuous for him to do so in his current state. He had roughly swept through 2 groups just now and he already felt tired. There were still tens of thousands of components left. Luo Nan reached out to pinch his eyebrows. It looked like increasing the dosage of the drug could not be delayed any longer. He immediately sent a message to Octopus. Octopus responded instantly. Octopus sent a sluggish emoji. Perhaps Octopus felt that it was not serious enough, so he enlarged the font in red and sent it over. Are you crazy? How many days has it been? Chapter 544. It had been snowing and raining in Xia City for nearly a week now. The ground and all sorts of buildings seemed to be permeated by the moisture. Many people complained that their entire bodies were rusty after a night's sleep. Their joints creaked and groaned. It was useless even if they turned the heating system to the max. There were even people petitioning on the government's website. They hoped that Xia City would use interference methods to disperse the rain and clouds so that the citizens could enjoy the warmth of the winter sun for a few days. On the Observing Faces show, the beautiful host used the tone of a script to chat with Phantom I Che-e. They talked about the weather and made it one of the topics of their conversation. Don't blame her for being a vase. Lord Ghost Eye loved this. The eyes of this old and unruly extraordinary were always so lively. They wandered back and forth on the beautiful host's body. Oh my God! Miss Shawn must be working hard to make this show in this damned weather. The beautiful host subconsciously drew her legs together. Her face revealed the professional smile that she was most adept at. It's all right. The sea is calm and tranquil. But it really feels different when I get ashore. Actually, this was a blatant lie. Ever since the luxurious cruise ship rented by the show arrived at the outer seas of Xia City, the beautiful host had been on the ship the entire time. She hadn't left even half a step. The other person who did this was Ghost Eye Che-e by her side. It was these two who spoke frankly and with assurance about the freezing rain in Xia City. The beautiful host began to enter the main topic. I've heard quite a few people say that the freezing rain in Xia City may be the result of some interference. After all, in an environment of -20 degrees, it is very difficult for a heavy snow to suddenly turn into continuous rain. What do you think about this? What opinion can I have? Currently, the Xia City branch has issued a denial order according to the emergency regulations. Ouyang and the martial monarch have endorsed this order. As a member of the society, I don't have permission. I don't have interview rights like you media, so I can only obediently stay in the outer seas. The rain in the outer seas has stopped for the past 2 days. The pitiful adaptability of the beautiful host was completely inadequate to deal with Ghost Eye's teasing. She was a bit stupefied for a moment. Fortunately, Ghost Eye beamed as he picked up the flexible screen next to him. However, there are quite a few comments on this matter on the internet. I like this one more. Moisture seems to be diffusing between the heavens and the earth, but in fact, it has already deviated from the laws of nature. It seems illusory yet real, unable to circulate. The beautiful host hurriedly followed. You mean this freezing rain is man-made? How could I say that? Luckily, Cat Eyes was in a good mood right now. Hey, I'm passing by. Don't miss it. Roche Yoga First Stage. Jungle Shooting Bird Stance. It's very precious first-hand information. How about you give it to me? The price is negotiable. As Cat Eyes spoke, she minded her own business and switched the content of the projection in front of her. The display showed Luo Nan standing on one foot, twisting his neck and breaking his arms in a strange pose. The drizzling rain had drenched his hair, and even beads of ice had formed on it. It was both funny and embarrassing. This was the result of Cat Eyes' personal photography this morning. Back then, Luo Nan had taken a break from his busy schedule. After he arrived at school, he went to the northern shore jungle. He followed Gym Master Xiao's principle of combining the inside and the outside. He posed in nature in an attempt to probe the mysteries behind his grandfather and father's comical poses. Shuelei wasn't on guard against Cat Eyes, and he leaked the relevant words. Then it spread throughout his circle of friends. Octopus was still picking and choosing. You've already posted these in the group. Is there anything more explosive? Cat Eyes gave him a sidelong glance. How about you drug him and let him run around naked outside for a bit? We'll record it when we get back. We'll split the profits 50-50. The two of them glanced at Luo Nan as they spoke. However, they didn't even roll their eyes at him, let alone get an echo. Right now, Luo Nan's hand was gently twirling a soft syringe. His eyes were fixed on the syringe. It was as if he wanted to unearth a forbidden secret technique to kill all the rebels within and outside of Xia City. He also seemed to be dispirited and helpless. His mind was faintly discernible, and his soul was wandering beyond the heavens. The two glanced at each other. At the same time, in a private chat channel on the Psychic Wave Network, information was displayed and refreshed layer by layer. See? I told you it was necessary. Is there a need to throw his life away? How could it be that serious? After all, we're doing this for his own good. Do you think we should make a move? I'm just a small fry. Yesterday I was a firefighter. Today I'm a bodyguard. Tomorrow I might even have to warm the bed. What qualifications do I have to speak? What's wrong with your mind? Speaking of which, do you really think you can make him sleep with you warming the bed? If you can do it, then don't look for me. Don't talk nonsense. Hurry up and get the person in charge. Sometimes this boss is simple and foolish, but sometimes he's as shrewd as a monkey. If you hesitate for too long and he sees through your flaws, then you're done for. Two simple words responded to Cat Eye's long-winded speech. Inject. On the plane of reality, Cat Eyes gave Octopus a look. Her meaning was, "Oh, the vice president in charge has spoken." Octopus shrugged. He didn't hesitate any longer. He could see the special white light within through his mental senses. Luo Nan extended his hand and attempted to open the suitcase. To the side, Octopus gave a warning. Needles. Be careful of needles. Can't you research it after the infusion? You're using your brain too much right now. Do you want to become mentally ill? I'm just looking. Brother Gao, can you open it a bit? Luo Nan wasn't a stubborn person, but under the influence of the suitcase full of white light, his current self-control was close to zero. Gao De hesitated for a moment, but he still walked forward under the sharp gazes of Octopus and Cat Eyes. He placed the metal suitcase flat according to the operation requirements. Then he opened the corresponding mechanism according to the unlock code sent by the military. The metal suitcase slowly opened amidst the clear and circular electromagnetic sound. At the same time, the suitcase separated. It was like an open folding chair under the support of a special metal frame. All sorts of accessory modules were embedded in the surrounding. Under the illumination of the lighting, a smooth and clean blue and white color like porcelain appeared. According to the operating procedures, the user just needed to sit on the chair and this exoskeleton armor would automatically assemble and assemble. The core installation would be worn for 15 seconds, and the entire process would take approximately 45 seconds. Gowder explained a step further. There's still room for adjustment when the armor is worn. However, this is an engineering prototype. It hasn't been activated yet. Luo Nan stared at the metal folding chair in front of him. He asked with interest, I heard that the activation condition is the format of fire. Is this true? According to the information, the activated Deep Blue Walker would undergo continuous fine adjustments according to the user's specific circumstances. For example, the overly dazzling outer coating would become much more restrained under the burning of the format of fire. Its built-in artificial intelligence chip could support deep neural network learning to coordinate with synchronization, guidance, and other functions. When necessary, such as when the user was seriously injured or unconscious, it could also perform some emergency operations, such as evacuation, concealment, and so on. Gowda responded, to be precise, starting from the third generation, all Deep Blue Walkers must undergo 2 confirmations before they can be activated. That is, DNA and the format of fire. This covers 3 types of authority: identity, qualifications, and control characteristics. However, it is said that the latest generation of research and development is to integrate all authority into the Dynamo core, including artificial intelligence. The equipment can only be used for auxiliary calculations. The Dynamo core, huh? Luonan looked pensive. She stared at Octopus. Octopus had an innocent expression. Luckily, God could answer this question. It was a prototype that hadn't been debugged. All sorts of functions needed to be adjusted. It was just right for DIY. Dismantling and dismantling was very normal. But dismantling wasn't the end of it. Structural adjustments needed to be made, and the wiring design needed to be changed as well. Luo Nan watched as God's emotions floated, but his mouth was still able to speak clearly and logically. God, a non-professional, was a bit stupefied when he listed 2 or 3 requests. He subconsciously asked, should we transfer an engineer over? The group of people looked at each other in dismay when a call was made to the Hexa ear. Luo Nan saw it and clapped his hands in laughter. Chapter 546. 10 minutes later, worker Zhai arrived at Gear. Originally, He and Luo Nan had discussed it over. Luo Nan would bring the materials for the exchange at night for Luo Nan's reference. He would accompany Luo Nan to stay up late and work overtime to rush out the lesson plans for the lecture the day after tomorrow. However, Luo Nan skipped class in the morning. The two contacted each other once during this time, and they decided to move the time forward. The sooner they finished, the sooner their hearts would calm down. Exchanging materials was not a problem for worker Zhai. As an engineer, recording experiments was second nature to him. He definitely had enough data and materials. Plus, communication materials focused on real experience and feelings, so there was no need for too much embellishment. After yesterday's dinner, with the help of the alcohol, he finished it in a few hours. However, when worker Zhai entered, he saw another fellow who was inexplicably excited. The professionals are here. Luo Nan swayed as he stood up from the recliner. He didn't wait for worker Zhai to come close before he shouted, "Worker Zhai, there's something I want to consult you about." Worker Zhai faintly felt that Luo Nan was a bit odd. He just responded subconsciously when he was pulled over. Worker Zhai listened to Luo Nan mumble about the requirements for modifying the ARM module. Fortunately, worker Zhai lived up to his reputation as a professional. He normally had a certain amount of research on exoskeleton technology. He listened to Luo Nan's request and inspected the actual object a few times. Then he said, "This is the structure of a pulse weapon. All you need to consider is the path of pulse wave deformation. There's also the field emission structure. Don't we have another one? How to guarantee the power output? What about the isolation barrier?" Worker Zhai's doubts were professional. Be it the former military officer or the two members of society, none of them knew how to respond. But Luo Nan knew that he had found the right person. He said in delight, "You don't need to worry about that. I want this style. Will it be troublesome to modify it? How long will it take?" Although worker Zhai had a good temper, he was a very strict person. He frowned slightly when he heard what was said and was about to ask again when he saw cat eyes and octopus giving him meaningful looks. God's expression was also very strange. At this time, worker Zhai finally confirmed that Luo Nan's state was a bit abnormal. At the very least, it was far too unrestrained. In the end, he was a mature person. He resisted the urge to ask too many questions. He just smiled at Luo Nan. "If you have some handy tools on hand, it'll probably take half an hour." Luo Nan didn't speak. He just stared straight at God. The latter was slightly stifled, but he came to a realization in time. The deep blue walkers come with their own basic maintenance modules. They gradually transformed into a surging force that was ready to gush out. He wanted to justify himself. But he was separated by a piece of paper, a layer of fog. He was unable to discern clearly no matter how hard he tried. What should he do? What should he do? Luo Nan's will pervaded the world once more, stirring the curtain of Xia City's night. He searched for the answer that was already at the tip of his tongue, but it was hard to advance an inch further. The scene of Xia City and its surroundings unfolded and contracted over and over again. It went through a seemingly meaningless cycle. But every cycle caused his will to fall from a realm that people were unable to perceive. It was like dark clouds that pressed down on an entire city, giving birth to a hazy and restless power. This power was on the verge of surpassing the limits of the polar domain. It entered the abyss region and even the even shallower mental plane. More and more ability users discovered this trend. The electric waves and psychic waves that traveled inside and outside of Xia City became more complex and subtle. And at this very moment, in a certain sanatorium on the outskirts of the city, an old man suddenly sat up in fright. He gasped for breath, coughed, and muttered something intermittently. The warning lights flashed, and the special nurse rushed over. She wanted to inject the old man with a tranquilizer. This was a common practice. But who knew that the old man's thin and weak body, which had already been tortured to the limit by the hallucinations, would somehow burst forth with a powerful energy. He pushed aside the special nurse and faced the deep night and freezing rain outside the window. He spread his arms wide open and laughed loudly. "All things are prepared for me. My heart is the universe." A hoarse voice tore out from his throat. It was like the rolling thunder of a rainy night. The tangible sound wave trapped the room, but the incorporeal vibration broke through all obstructions. It penetrated the boundary between the material and the mental. It resonated with the blood vessels dozens of kilometers away with a buzzing sound. The sound of thunder came stealthily, and lightning came startling. The flash of an instant penetrated through everything. It pierced through the piece of paper, dispersed the layer of fog, and revealed the answer that should have yet to come. Form, pronunciation, mood, charm. All sorts of elements converged into a concept, a meaning, yet it was also a concrete and minute word. Perhaps some details could be changed, but the core elements were firm and unchangeable. Chapter 547. Luo Nan's figure suddenly froze. He had returned to his normal standing posture. He just stared blankly ahead. It was as if there was an unmistakable image in front of him that attracted all of his attention. Phew! Octopus was finally able to breathe normally. The feeling of restraint on his entire body disappeared. Who in the world is the one having hysteria? Why do I feel like a ghost is pressing down on me? He had the heart to complain, but the entire room was filled with a different kind of suffocating atmosphere. Everyone looked at Luo Nan. Some looked in front of Luo Nan, but no one could understand what was in front of Luo Nan. Luo Nan was still moving. He extended his hand, his index finger slightly protruding forward. It was as if he wanted to draw something, but he hesitated. Octopus was currently the person closest to Luo Nan. There was an inexplicable pressure behind him. He turned to see Cat Eyes standing up from behind the sofa, so he tiptoed over. It seemed safer to have two people as companions. Bah! What kind of damned thought was this? Luo Nan really gave off a very strange feeling. Octopus would never forget the feeling of his breathing being locked. Speaking of which, wasn't there a problem with the intensity of Luo Nan's mental interference with matter? Was his knowledge outdated? Octopus could not help but grow an intense curiosity when he looked at Luo Nan's posture. His gaze swept over and he saw the surveillance equipment he brought. There was a projector attached to it. He had used it to watch a few programs before. He blinked and carefully moved over. He turned on the projector's drawing function, sprinkling a sheet of light. He adjusted it to the tip of Luo Nan's finger. This way, he could more or less figure out what Luo Nan was drawing. Octopus really admired his own train of thought. But a hand reached out from the side just as he was about to place the projector. With a click, the projector was turned off. The one who reached out was Cat Eyes. For some reason, her face was a bit pale. Her expression was solemn. Don't court death. Ha! Chin Ikuan was a bit more familiar with Octopus. He shook his head. Too sensitive. Octopus was a smart person. He understood in an instant when he heard this. He knew that he had done things poorly. In this dangerous time, any information related to Luo Nan's abilities should be kept as secret as possible to avoid being seized by people with ulterior motives. Even if they could all be trusted, a place like Gear was said to have already been infiltrated by various powers. There was no telling if there was an invisible camera hidden in some corner. Just now, Luo Nan had been injected with medicine, and now he had to record Luo Nan's marvelous state and the results. This was the work of a spy. Octopus raised his hand, indicating that he had lost his mind. It was also at this time that Luo Nan's finger finally determined the location of the pen. It began to wander and trace. There were no obvious directions or traces, so the others were completely unable to understand what Luo Nan was drawing. Cat Eyes might be able to sense a little, but the details were just as Gym Master Xiao had said, the most important thing was the details. Luo Nan went to dig out the details under a kind of marvelous awareness. The starry interface of the virtual brain app appeared in front of him. At the center of the outline of the virtual brain, countless stars were concentrated, forming a bright cluster of stars that looked like a silver core. At the edge of the outline of the virtual brain, a small matchstick man made of a few stars and their connections had just moved to this place. In fact, this matchstick man's original position was within the virtual brain. It was just that after the virtual brain app and the drawing software fused together, Luo Nan's format pyramid blended with it, and the starry scene of the self format mixed with it, changing its form. When Luo Nan discovered this, he relied on his memories to restore the matchstick man to its original state, placing it in a corner of the virtual brain's interface. He never imagined that this cautious action would become the key to breaking free from his muddled state. He never imagined that the outline of this matchstick man would actually match the mysterious posture of his grandfather and father in the photo. Of course, the most important thing was that it clearly indicated a certain form and a certain meaning when combined with the photo. If this was the Luo Nan of the past, he might have been suspicious of the logic behind this similarity. But now, under the impact of surging inspiration, he was like a radical painter who had entered a state of mind. His fingertips drew what he thought in his heart. He reached forward with his finger when he had finished accumulating. He tapped a point amidst the hazy and dense stars within the virtual brain's outline. The first time he put his pen to the brush was not at the edge of the cluster of stars. Instead, it was at a region slightly above it. Although the cluster of stars was a combination of the self-format and the matchstick man, the stars were densely packed, and the positions of the points were disorderly. It was extremely easy to get lost within. The matchstick man was too simple, and the symbolism of the photo was too much. Only by combining the three and relying on that instant of understanding could he draw out the outline of the network and draw it invisibly, revealing the true meaning to the greatest degree. Luo Nan's fingertips followed the flow and connected the lines between the stars. It was as if he was drawing a complex constellation diagram. He treated this process as a sketch, but the difficulty was much greater. Not only did he have to draw the picture in his mind, he also had to ensure that the lines traveled back and forth between the points of the stars. But the driving force within Luo Nan's mind remained strong even when the outline was clear and the complicated structural lines within neared its end. It was because this word, this meaning, was in high agreement with the ideals he had adhered to and followed for many years. There was no deviation at all. And the details it presented, every dot and stroke, every structure, every change, seemed to have been engraved into his memories and soul a long time ago. This was not the opening of a new world. It was the search for the homeland of his dreams. Later on, understanding, memories, and resonance dominated everything. The power that gushed out was like a great river that converged 100 rivers. It pushed forward layer by layer without end. Under the push of this power, Luo Nan had already ignored everything he knew and felt. He only pondered and experienced the word, I. Gradually, those complicated details were exhausted, and the area he wanted to reach became narrower and narrower. Unknowingly, he suddenly reached some kind of indescribable limit. The surging power suddenly collided with the impregnable high wall of a dam. With a loud bang, it violently shook, and then rapidly contracted. The starry sky of the virtual brain's interface instantly collapsed and condensed into a single point. Luo Nan's perception and consciousness collapsed at the same time. It was unknown how much time had passed, but a crack suddenly opened amidst the primal chaos. A single line pierced through the boundless. A single line passed through the dim light. A single line pierced through the void. 3 straight lines crisscrossed and pierced through the origin point, which had collapsed to the limit. It was like a coordinate system, but it was not mathematics. It was a kind of intuition. The unique structure of information went from a point to a line, from a line to a surface, and then to a three-dimensional space. It continued to flow and change. During this process, the surroundings of Xia City, the surrounding seas, and the wilderness, as well as the millions and millions of living beings that lived and multiplied on them, all manifested their brand new concepts layer by layer. These objects, living beings, and changes that existed objectively seemed to have been painted anew by an extraordinary painter. They revealed inconceivably vivid forms. Luo Nan's horizons were broadened anew. He observed everything with clairvoyance, feeling new and amazed. It seemed that every detail contained sufficient information. There were even more subtle things that appeared within the range of his clairvoyance and the coverage of his soul cloak. They were like countless fragile bubbles. Most of them were not fixed. They had not even truly taken shape. Though they revealed gorgeous colors, they would vanish in large swathes in an extremely short amount of time. Then they would form in large swathes. Chapter 548. The person who came was undoubtedly Her Majesty Empress Wu. However, Luo Nan didn't know whether she was mocking or praising him when he sensed this telepathic thought. In the next second, the oppressive feeling and the feeling of impact as the peak flew over, as well as the resulting sense of crisis, pushed him out of the realm of illusory and real, returning him to a more realistic plane. He discovered that his soul strength had unconsciously sunk down on the mental plane. It had already entered the abyss region, and it even affected the deeper layers. No wonder Her Majesty Empress Wu had caught him red-handed. But at the same time, the massive amount of detailed information he had combed and harvested was gathered together. Layer by layer, it became real benefits. Her Majesty Empress Wu's telepathic thought arrived before he could experience the deeper changes. You have casually invaded the plane of consciousness of others. This is the crime of voyeurism. According to the law, you should be detained, but you can be released on bail. Do you need to pay bail? If you're trustworthy enough, then fine. Luo Nan was already covered in lice. He wasn't in the mood to tease others right now, especially when he heard Her Majesty Empress Wu describe the plane of consciousness. His curiosity and thirst for knowledge could no longer be restrained. It's related to the plane of consciousness. Aren't those bubbles? Please shut up. Her Majesty Empress Wu bluntly refused his request to communicate. According to my understanding of the situation, every ability user has their own unique insights in this domain. My medicine is another's poison. Peeping isn't enough. Do you want to murder me? Then forget it. Her Majesty Empress Wu's attitude was clear. Regardless of whether or not this reason was valid, Luo Nan didn't need to say anything more. Her Majesty Empress Wu gave him a reminder. I'm very happy that you're working hard, but please don't be too high profile. It's not good to scare the cats and dogs and harm the flowers and plants. Ha! The cold and towering power erupted once more. The incorporeal pressure completely expelled Luo Nan from the mental plane he was currently in. Luo Nan's mental senses took advantage of the situation to leap into the air and return to the polar domain. Almost at the instant he returned, he saw with a far-sighted perspective that a few consecutive waves of unique order fluctuations had cut into the region of the level he was previously at. Looking at the direction, not a single wave came from the city. A portion came from the wilderness outside the city, and another portion came from the open sea. This showed that the effects of the Xia City branch's denial order were quite good. However, from another point of view, the waves it sensed could cross hundreds of kilometers and travel up and down the abyssal region. The source of these fluctuations seemed to be quite powerful. The contents of the user manual seemed to talk about mechanical structures and various materials, but the scope of its actual application included various properties and corresponding interference forms on the mental and material planes. Though it was just a single sentence and there were very few explanatory words, Luo Nan was a psychic ability user whose practical ability far surpassed his theoretical ability. He combined his own experience and observed the similarities and differences. He felt that the information inside would give him inconceivable inspiration from time to time. From Wednesday night until now, Luo Nan's brain seemed to have been washed over in a period of over 40 hours. He did not feel it when he was in the monotonous environment of the central control room, but once he walked out, his line of sight and his six senses were unable to bear his various gains. His mental senses naturally expanded, connecting to his soul cloak and spreading to every corner of the spiderweb of the altar. He subconsciously narrowed his eyes. For others, this was just an ordinary winter evening. Many days of freezing rain had swept away the last bit of vitality and greenery in the surrounding jungle. But for Luo Nan, no matter the time or place, this world was always blurred and gorgeous. It was to the extent that he needed to exercise a bit of restraint. Otherwise, he might get lost within this world at any time. How wonderful! Seeking knowledge, cognition, disorder, order. Such a pure research process made him feel as if he had returned to 3 or 4 months ago, when he was immersed in his notes and drugs. And the frequent discoveries and improvements he was experiencing right now were extravagant hopes that he would have in the past. If he could combine the strong points of the two and abandon the weak points of the other, then perhaps that would be the happiest of days. Luo Nan let out a long breath soundlessly. The other people from Gear came out one after another. Shuelei was there as well, aside from the security team. Tonight's course had nothing to do with his fleshly body. He came purely to support Luo Nan's group of friends and family. This brother was clumsy on the outside but skillful on the inside. His social skills far surpassed Luo Nan's. He had joined the Ability User Society for 2 months, and he was already able to call friends and pull out a few people to strengthen his influence. Aside from Shuelei, The few people in Luo Nan's circle of friends all expressed that they wanted to personally come to the scene. Let's not talk about anything else, but they could cheer a few times and clap a few times to avoid awkward silence. Luo Nan turned his head to glance. Everyone's here? Then let's go. Hold on a moment. Where's Rui Wen? Cat Eyes went downstairs and discovered that one person was missing. Moreover, it was the one with the highest net worth. But she wasn't in a hurry. She just stared at Luo Nan. Luo Nan grunted. By the time they felt the wind suddenly increase, the group had already arrived at the Limestone Water Village Hotel in the large residential district and boarded the landing platform. The temperature of Xia City dropped again over the past 2 days. Strong winds and freezing rain blew on the high-altitude platform. Even though the floor heating equipment was running 24/7, there would still be ice particles tumbling from time to time, forming a layer of white fur. The shuttle was ready, and there was even a female flight attendant standing by the gangway with a smile. In this windy weather, she wore a small round hat and a dark blue windbreaker, revealing only the slender curves of her calves. She was a very stylish uniformed beauty. Seeing this, Shui Lei exclaimed in admiration, "The treatment of bosses and professors is indeed different. Not to mention the flying shuttle, even the flight attendants are assigned." Before he could finish his words, he realized that something was wrong with the atmosphere. The security team looked over with cold gazes. He immediately realized that this was not a flight attendant, and she looked very familiar. A few fragments of memories flashed through his mind, and he finally remembered. Zhangji, that Zhangji frontier streamer, right? Why is she here? Yeah. Why is she here? Cat Eyes snorted twice. It was fine if they wanted to interview her, but how could the timing be so coincidental? Zhangji lightly held her small round hat with one hand to prevent it from being blown away by the wind. Even so, her bearing was still dignified and professional. She greeted with a smile. "Hello, Boss Luo. Hello, everyone. I took the liberty to disturb you because your branch uses the resources of Xia City's military. It just so happens that Major General Tian Bang owes me a favor, so he gave me a chance to interview Boss Luo." She opened her mouth and sold out the backstage, but it was also because of this that the security team felt that the situation was even more complicated. Currently, the cooperation between the Xia City branch and the government and military could be considered relatively close. In other words, everyone had to give each other face. And Tian Bang was one of the few people who maintained a relatively good relationship with several parties. If it was because of his face, the Xia City branch would really have to pay attention. Of course, whether it was Qin Yikuan, Gao De, or Cat Eyes, they were all security personnel and not politicians. All they had to do was strictly adhere to security standards. As for the attitude of the branch's big shots, they could wait until they gave the order before considering it. Qin Yikuan extended his hand to stop Zhangji, not letting her go forward. "If there's a need for an interview, please contact the branch's coordination department. I'm a flight attendant of the shuttle right now. Then please follow the requirements of flight attendants and guarantee the employer's privacy." Qin Yikuan invited Luo Nan to board the plane as he spoke. Luo Nan glanced at Zhangji. Zhangji already had ample experience in similar encounters. She saw Luo Nan look over, and she instantly switched to reporter mode. She split the camera lens into two. One was secretly aimed at Rui Wen, and the other was aimed at Luo Nan. She waved her hand and shouted loudly, "Boss Luo, can you talk about your current thoughts and attitudes? What are your thoughts on the current situation within and outside of Xia City? Can you make a prediction about the future development?" Luo Nan stopped at the bottom of the accommodation ladder. He seemed to have been moved. God saw this and whispered into Luo Nan's ear, "Don't pay attention to this kind of person. She can do anything to attract attention." Zhangji didn't even need to think to know that God definitely didn't have anything good to say. But she had high expectations for Luo Nan's reaction. It would be fine as long as he didn't completely ignore her. If he really couldn't do it, she could say a few more stimulating words. As long as there was an explosive point, everything would be fine. "He's doing a live broadcast." Luo Nan's response stunned everyone for a moment. Qin Yikuan turned his head. "Mr. Luo." In the end, he couldn't say anything to dissuade her. Because at this time, Luo Nan extended his arm and swept it over the top of his and Zhang Ji's empty heads. It was like he was fishing out an invisible net. Luo Nan even rubbed his fingers a few times, as if he was testing the weight of the material. What does that mean? Qin Ikuan was stunned, and so was Zhang Ji. Luo Nan paused for 2 or 3 seconds before speaking. There aren't too many of them. Less than 2,000 people. Zhang Ji subconsciously glanced at the number of viewers in the live broadcast room. 1854 people. She was stupefied there for a moment, but soon suspicion grew in her mind. This bro couldn't have seen the number of viewers online and come over to scare me, right? How boring could this be? Luo Nan walked up the gangway. Since Tian Bang told you to come, then come. Qin Ikuan and God wanted to dissuade him, but Cat Eyes stopped them. She discussed with them in a special channel. Boss Luo's brain isn't normal. There's no point in opposing him. What's wrong with letting this woman come up? In any case, the following event was absolutely public. Even if this woman didn't take pictures or interviews, there would still be a large number of people taking pictures and uploading them online. This kind of information was worthless. Plus, it gave them a reason. When the teaching event ended, they would immediately kick this woman away. She wouldn't be able to say anything. Cat Eye's plan was very reliable. At least, it was much more reliable than Luo Nan's baffling idea. The security team quickly formed a consensus. Overall, there weren't any particularly abrupt points of attention. Most people still wanted to know where the most valuable target in the world was, what it was doing, and where it would go in the future. Without a doubt, the strength of the security team and the abilities of the main targets were all information they desperately wanted to know. Zhang Ji tried hard to find a good entry point. Chapter 552. As the winter solstice approached, the length of daylight in Xia City approached its limit. Especially with the consecutive days of overcast rain, the color of the sky darkened early in the morning. One could only see the dusky curtain of night descend even when traveling through the high-altitude traffic layer. However, millions upon millions of lights were already spread out within the scope of the metropolis. The traffic snaked about, and the red and white lights were like the waters of a river. The enormous city area was divided into intermittent blocks of colorful light. It was like a nation of 1,000 islands floating above the black tide. The night scenery of Xia City was undoubtedly extremely beautiful. However, Luo Nan's line of sight was filled with splendor, but it was not the sea of lights of the city. Instead, it was a marvelous scenery on the mental plane. Countless dazzling bubbles were pushed and stacked on top of each other. Most of them were popping up and then extinguishing. They flowed and changed extremely quickly, and they even warped and pretended to form an extremely complex and irregular state. As for its general shape, it was simply vast and mighty. It stretched across the boundless horizon. It was said to be a vast ocean, but it was only a simple intuition or analogy. There was absolutely no understanding of the whole in the true sense. Luo Nan was unable to find an accurate definition of the scope, so he studied the concept of depth. The 3 layers, 1 area, 1 domain theory of the inner world attempted to differentiate and analyze this dazzling mental world from the concept of depth. Previously, Luo Nan had used a pure observation mode of clairvoyance. The scene he perceived was quite different from the commonly used theory. However, ever since he outlined the peculiar word, I, in his mind, he suddenly understood that the difference between the 2 scenes was actually due to the difference in observation angle and emphasis. There was a deep level of knowledge within. Luo Nan diligently studied the user manual of the Spirit Core system for the past 2 days. He used the results of his study to corroborate with what he knew, saw, and felt in the past. He gained much, and his understanding became clearer. But at the same time, he came into contact with many more, even more marvelous, even more inconceivable phenomena. Actually, he could see these things before, but his understanding was unclear. It was hard for him to filter out special and independent components from the numerous and complicated phenomena. For example, he never thought that the electromagnetic waves that carried the flow of information could form an efficient and direct effect on the mental plane. Just like the current situation in the flying shuttle. Due to Zhang Ji's live broadcast, the electromagnetic waves that carried the effective content formed a sort of force field. It acted on the mental plane, causing countless strands of soul strength to twist and mix within, forming wondrous specks of light and vortexes. Many of these soul energies originated from thousands or even tens of thousands of kilometers away. It was no wonder that many people always said that the mental plane belonged to another dimension. If one did not interfere with the physical plane and simply manipulated and distorted it, it would be much easier than imagined. Then again, it wasn't like he couldn't interfere. According to the user manual, everything was a structural problem. Luo Nan's gaze moved back from outside the porthole as he thought to himself. He cast his gaze onto Zhang Ji, and he felt a bit emotional. However, his overly direct gaze made Zhang Ji's heart tremble. The tens of thousands of viewers in the live broadcast room only made eye contact with him once. He's not old, but his lust is not small. The latest perverted shota is out. Zhang Ji, don't be afraid. I'm behind you. He must have felt the resentment of thousands of people. Isn't that greed? There were changes in the spots of light in the vortex, but there was still no meaning in the structure. As Luo Nan was thinking this, the flying shuttle had already arrived at the Shangding building. It was the safest place in Xia City most of the time. The one who came to receive them was Zhang Yingying. Compared to the freezing winter weather, she was dressed a bit too lightly. She wore a beige windbreaker paired with an oversized t-shirt. Her lower body was ripped denim, and her knees revealed very damp fishnet stockings and fair skin. She wore a baseball cap on her head. She gave off a rather rebellious feeling, but she was also unrivaled in youth. Compared to Zhang Yingying, Luo Nan's clothes were far too scholarly. Acumen College didn't force students above the 10th grade to wear school uniforms, but Luo Nan had never put any effort into dressing up. He wore shirts and pants all year round. When the weather was cold, he would add a layer of thermal underwear and the like. Acumen College was a well-known school, so the uniform issued by Acumen College perfectly met all of his requirements. Therefore, he was wearing a school uniform right now. His overall shape was similar to Rue Wen's, just that he wore a thick jacket. He stood next to Zhang Yingying, making her look like a little girl delinquent. Perhaps everyone had a different aesthetic point of view. Zhang Yingying couldn't help but purse her lips when she saw his attire. This appearance. Are you sure you can control the situation? Take off your jacket, go in, and stand on the lectern. Everyone will suspect that you went into the wrong room. Cat eyes passed Luo Nan and gave Zhang Yingying a hug with a smile. She also joked with her, that's just to match you. Maybe it was you who urged him to skip class. Yeah, maybe it was an elopement. Get lost. Okay. Soon, he found the message from Her Majesty Empress Wu among the few unread messages. Looking at the time, it was around noon. He had adjusted the operating mode of his equipment and charged the external neurons. Back then, he had focused his mind on reading and analyzing the user manual. He had completely ignored the message from the Hexa ear. Why wasn't there a special prompt? A phone call would have been fine. This display was unreliable. Luo Nan ridiculed wildly as he opened the relevant interface. Then, clear handwriting appeared before his eyes. It should be Her Majesty Empress Wu's handwriting. Bullshit. I don't know if I should say MP. If you don't let me say it, then I have nothing to say. And at this moment, Luo Nan's corresponding micro-expression passed through the lens of Zhang Ji's live broadcast. It crossed mountains and rivers to arrive before the eyes of tens of thousands. No, it had already reached 20,000 viewers in the live broadcast room. Wahahaha. See that? I give that dumbfounded expression 100 points. 1,000 points. 10,000 points. What a performance. Oh my God. What should I do? What should I do? Why hasn't the training started yet? I can't help but look forward to it. I beg Her Majesty Empress Wu to review the text. My dinner money is all here. I'm sorry. Although I know it's wrong, I'm at the scene. I'll hold back from showing off a bit. Zhang Yingying couldn't help but jump into Zhang Ji's live broadcast room. She saw the instant explosion of bullet screens and the terrifying rise in the number of viewers. She couldn't help but feel dizzy. Were all the ability users of the world waiting to watch a good show? Zhang Yingying's gaze pierced towards Zhang Ji. Zhang Ji put her hands together and made an apologetic gesture, but she still resolutely continued the live broadcast. What a joke. She would continue the live broadcast even if she was killed. Zhang Yingying's eyes revealed an ominous glint in response. Qin Ikuan whispered, It's useless. Everyone can broadcast. Something good will definitely happen. It will continue. The elevator arrived with a ding-dong while they were talking. Luo Nan walked out of the elevator and arrived at the venue of today's elementary training in Xia City. There was already a staff member waiting outside. He led Luo Nan over when he saw him. "Mr. Luo, please come this way." The last class ended a bit early. Mr. Zhai's experience exchange is about to begin. It's estimated to be around 20 minutes. Luo Nan instinctively said, "Oh," and walked out of the elevator. However, Zhang Yingying rushed in front of him. She gritted her teeth and said to the staff member, "Internal training. Disconnect the internet." The staff member was stunned. He subconsciously said, "We agreed that the entire elementary training would be broadcasted live on the Psychic Wave Network." Live my ass. Zhang Yingying couldn't help but curse. Gouda stood in front of Zhang Ji, blocking her in the elevator. He temporarily prevented her from filming. However, the number of bullet screens hit a new high today amidst the terrible live broadcast experience. At the same time, the purity of the comments also rose. There were thousands upon thousands of laugh or cry emojis. Qin Ikuan finally sighed. This was truly a tragic way to handle public opinion. In the end, they were just security guards. They weren't professional public relations personnel. The group of people looked at each other in dismay in the elevator. The staff member had an innocent expression on his face. The sound of microphone testing could already be heard in the conference room. The buzzing noise of human voices became clearer. Luo Nan scratched his head at this time. He didn't say anything and just walked straight ahead. Zhang Yingying wanted to pull him from behind, but she was stopped by cat eyes. 20 minutes is very precious. In reality, Luo Nan had walked through the corridor for no more than 2 seconds. Under the guidance of the staff member, he entered through the entrance of the lounge. He didn't stop and went to the front desk. "You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories."